G'day listeners and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. We're the AFL fantasy podcast that doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the players who are going to bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. My name's Hef, and to join me for the first episode of 2025, I have Jordan DeSena with me. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, Hef. Thanks for having me on. It's a full preseason mode, so great to kick off 2025.
Speaking of the preseason, what have you been up to over the break?
Yeah, it's been busy with gigs and stuff. So obviously that break time, you got New Year's Eve, you got Christmas Eve gigs. There's heaps going on, so I have pretty busy with that. But it's good to sort of be back to a bit of structure now, mid-January. Speaking
of gigs and stuff like that, I heard you played at the Morphettville Racecourse earlier. Was it late last year? Was it?
Yep.
And there was a special guest at one of your gigs.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was setting up. I was doing a sound check, and as I'm doing that, I see straight ahead Dean Cox with a group of mates. This is like a couple of weeks after the draft, or maybe even the week after the draft.
Yeah.
And he's like singing along to the song, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to go up and just say hey and get a photo. So I did. And then he was just a great sport, and he was listening like all day. He was just singing along, and then he came up to me at the end of the gig and said, "Hey mate, great set." He's like, "Where should we go now?" And I said, "Oh, maybe you should go and check out the Highway.
Yep.
It's a good pub, you know." And I got a photo with him and stuff. And then I just thought I'd flick him a message the next day just to say, "Did you end up like go on the Highway?" And he responded, and he's just a great bloke. So love Dean Cox, and and then actually a few days later, he announced his coach.
So I think him meeting you was the thing that needed to encourage, I guess. That he must have come back from Adelaide, because he was over here to welcome one of the new draftees. Is that right?
He went and saw Ned Bowman or something.
Yeah. So he must have come back and realised, met Jordan DeSena and had this extra spring in his step, and just must have radiated this aura, and Horse must have known it was time to step down. So I reckon we can put it on you that you're the reason why Dean Cox is now the coach of Sydney, don't you reckon?
I couldn't believe it. I reckon he flew from Adelaide to Sydney, and then he's the coach next day.
Yeah, I think
literally.
I'm pretty sure it was the day after.
Yeah.
You met him, so yeah, that's pretty funny. And you were texting him on Instagram, wasn't it?
I was texting him, and he was responding. I couldn't believe it.
That's amazing. So did you get any fantasy insights from him?
Well, this is the thing. I'm like, do I ask him? Like, do I just say, like, you know? And I was like, do I congratulate him? I don't know. I haven't done it yet. Yeah. But like, do I just slide in again? Not sure. I'm still thinking about it.
Just hey, where do you think Callum Mills is going to play?
That's my biggest question.
Well, we might be talking about that tonight, because we are going to talk about defenders in this podcast. So I don't know. I think we might as well just get stuck into it for the first episode of the season. In these preseason episodes, we talk about a position. So tonight we're doing defenders, and we talk about undervalued players, breakout contenders, stash options, and older players, and we will touch on a few rookies that we like in defense for our draft and keeper league teams. So let's get stuck into it. You're decked out in Port Adelaide gear tonight, like the absolute Port Nuffy that you are. I'm a Port Nuffy too, so I can't really judge you. But the first player we've got on the list is Kane Farrell. Now, he averaged 78.4 last season. The main reason I've got him on here is people have been asking all preseason, who's the main beneficiary of Houston leaving? Do you think Kane Farrell could be that guy?
I actually think it is. I just don't know if he can go as high as Houston. Like, Houston went at 94. I think I see Farrell getting a bump there, you know, being an 80s guy. But I just don't. There's a lot of talk in the community that he's just going to be this 90-plus guy. And I just think that I feel like we're going to share it around there. And I just think Houston was just so elite. I just think he is going to get that bump and probably be the main man. But I don't think he's going to go 90. I think he's going to be 80s.
Yep.
And I think he's going to be very handy for a keeper. But yeah, I think there's a bit of talk about him just being the straight Houston replacement, and he's just going to be a 90s guy. And I'm a bit unsure about that.
The thing with Houston, I find, is like Port Adelaide don't play a defensive structure that tends to fantasy scoring. Houston was just an amazing player. Exactly. And he's the kind of player that, because he's so good, they want the ball in his hands at all times. Plus, he's the main kick-out kind of taker as well. So I reckon, Farrell, you might see the kick-out bump. You might see all the ones that went to Houston now going his way. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it's going to be a huge bump. But I do think he's going to be the main guy back there because if you look at all the other kind of defenders back there, I guess Logan Evans could see a bit of a bump as well. But if you look at someone like Bergman, I don't see him doing too much different because he plays so defensively. And the other guys back down there, they're essentially 3 talls. You think Burgoyne's going to play on the wing as well? So
yeah, I think, Burgoyne, there was an article that came out that says he's pretty settled on the wing.
Yeah.
So he did that one game this semi. It's just hard to see who he's going to play. I think he broke out so well on the wing this last year.
There was that little article that came out in the Advertiser, wasn't it? That Christian Moraes could be slotting into that halfback line as well. So don't want to give too much away about the rookies because we did do a whole rookie podcast and you should go and listen to that. But on that podcast, didn't I make a little call that I could see someone playing across that halfback line?
You said it to me and then I saw it in the advertisement. It said little X factor to keep. Yeah, just keep an eye on. So I'm so keen to go out to Port Training, just have a look at that spot because if he can get a game,
Yeah, we'll talk about rookies later on, but just Hefstradamus over here. I can see the future. Christian Moraes, watch out for that name. Let's move on to Lockie Ash. He averaged 77.4 last season. Is it time for him to break out?
I would love it to. I've been an Ash owner for 4 years and I've been waiting for this. I think he's got the speed. He's a great player. I just think, can he do it? Perryman's gone. Cumming is gone, but Cumming sort of played on the wing a bit last year.
And played 4 games, wasn't it?
Played 4 games.
Yeah.
Ash did go 85 last year.
Yeah.
The year before. So that, to me, I feel like that's at least the minimum he can bump up to because he has done that before.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at some numbers and, there's only 2 games he didn't play without Perryman last year. And in those 2 games, he averaged 94.
Yeah.
So it's a small sample size. And then I was looking actually the year before when Perryman went, because Perryman didn't have any CBAs last year.
Yeah.
He played basically defense. And the year before he did have some CBAs. And during that time, Ash averaged about 88. So it was I feel like it is a Perryman is going to be a factor for him. It's just whether or not he can push that 90 plus. I feel like 85 is minimum. I'd love it to do it, but I think, as an owner, you'd want to try and jump on now, I think.
Yeah, I think everything kind of tends to him this season, doesn't it? And thinking the future as well, Whitfield's 31 now as well. They're running out of halfback distributors, really. So he could be the main guy in a couple of seasons' time. So I think you're right. Now is the time to jump on Lockie Ash because if you don't, there's a good chance you'll miss the boat now. Yeah.
And say he goes 85 next year and then it's coming on. That's a great... that's very handy for a keeper.
Yeah, 100% agree. Let's move on to Matt Roberts here. So he had 76 last season, and really, by the end of the season, he was kind of established himself and almost as a premium scorer. Really, the average is low. I guess in these podcasts, and I should have prefaced this, when we talk about undervalued players, we generally talk about players that averaged under 80 the year before because once they hit that 80 mark, they're kind of guaranteed keepers in most leagues, except for maybe a few midfielders and stuff like that. But yeah, Roberts was one that probably should have averaged 80 if it weren't for a few kind of sub scores and things like that. But I guess my question with him, there's a new coach, obviously Dean Cox, your best mate that we've just talked about. Yeah. What happens there? Does he change things? Does someone like Jake Lloyd go back? What does Callum Mills do? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I really like Roberts. I thought he really solidified his spot down back, and he's got a pretty wicked leg. So I feel like he's pretty handy back there. Taking out those sub games and those wing games, he averaged 94. So I feel like he maybe is a 90 guy. I don't know. Look, I might be a bit biased, but I just feel like Mills is gonna go inside. I feel like as the captain of the club, and he had that, that shoulder injury and hamstrings, and I just feel like he's not going to play defense. He's going to play a midfield role. Yeah. And I just feel like that's going to just help someone like Matt Roberts.
Yeah. Do you reckon, what do you reckon about Lloyd? Do you reckon there's any chance of him going back, or has Roberts just got that? Because I guess the general consensus is among the community that one of Roberts or Lloyd is going to have that cushy halfback distributor role. Is Roberts locked in, or is under Cox? Could he go back to Lloyd and we see some switcheroos?
Lloyd is just that up and down yo-yo guy that
I was so ready to drop him, and then he scored that 150 in the finals. So it's
look, I did see a video today of them training, and Lloyd was in the yeah, he looked like he was around the ball, and he's obviously in the main side. So I
Yeah.
think he's obviously in there. I just don't know what Cox is going to do. He's just, like, what is Lloyd now? Like 31, 32?
Yeah, 31, I reckon.
So, like,
yeah.
I can see him going both ways. Like, I can see him just being,
Yeah.
because he averaged 76.
Yeah.
Like, I can see him just being that as well.
I guess,
And, like, yeah.
I guess it's kind of a moot point anyway, because given that Lloyd is that age, Matt Roberts is going to be that guy
Yes.
very, very soon if he's not already. You know what I mean? And I've got a good feeling that he is that already. Maybe it's just me as a Jake Lloyd owner not wanting to putting him back into the pool this year, and hopefully he can get one
Just in
more
case.
season out of him. But
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. Anyways, let's move on to Harry Perryman is the next one. So 74 average last season. Do you think he's in line for the new club bump? And I guess, where do you see him playing at Collingwood?
Yeah, I was thinking about this today a lot because they offered him a 6-year deal.
Yeah.
So they went after him pretty hard. Like, there was talks of him coming to Port and stuff and Hawthorn, and they've given him some big money there. I think they've obviously got a role for him. Titch is injured now. Like,
Yeah,
he's got
done his foot
he's
thing
done the
again.
foot.
Yeah.
So like, I can sort of see him just doing what Titch, like, being in the midfield a bit and doing a role there in the midfield.
Yeah.
And Collingwood have heaps of halfbacks.
Yeah.
You got your Crisps, your Maynards, your Quainers. They put Pendlebury back there at some point.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't. They got Houston now.
Yeah.
There was talks of Josh Dacos in training playing back there.
Yeah.
So I don't really know where he's going to play. I think, there's always that new club bump, but Perryman's like, I've been doing all my keepers, like, teams for, like, other players and other teams in my league, and he might be one that is going to get dropped, like, from other teams.
Yeah, right.
And he might be in the pool.
Yeah,
and that
right.
might be like something that someone could go, like, I'm thinking, like, if he's there, I might just take a punt on him.
Yeah.
As a defender. Could he go 80s? Like, that's his highest he's ever gone is high 80s.
Yeah.
Playing that midfield right giant. So, between 74 and 88 is probably where I see him. It's hard to know. There's so many. They've got actually a bit of depth now, Collingwood, in the mids and backline. So, yeah.
I made the point. I was actually on the official Supercoach podcast today,
Right.
bluffing my way through because I played Supercoach for one season. But I made this kind of point today about why I'm so keen on, I guess, even though Nick Dacos has got the foot injury, I'm keen on him just because their midfield is starting to look more and more brittle each day. So 3 of their main kind of distributors in there, and I guess you mentioned Titch, and he's probably going to be out of the side now anyway, but they're all over 30. Like, they're getting so old. Whereas, like, they're going to need someone like Harry Perryman, maybe Ed Allen comes through a bit more, but I feel like, and you mentioned Josh Dacos as well, probably playing more of an inside role, but I feel like there's going to have to be a changing of the guard in there soon. And, they've picked up Dan Houston, so do they need Harry Perryman to play across that half-back line, or could they chuck him straight back in the midfield like he was at GWS a couple seasons ago and see a huge bump this season? So whatever the result is, I reckon he's worth the risks in your draft to kind of go semi-early or earlier than his 74 average suggests anyway, don't you think?
I think so. And that's, going back to that. If he's there in the pool, I think I'm going to give him a crack because as a defender, that's very handy for keepers.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's move out on to the breakout contenders. So this is usually 3rd to 4-year players, 4th-year players, sometimes earlier if they're shaping up, that kind of look like they fit the mold to have a breakout season. They're trending the right way for a breakout. You might look at them on the breakout tracker, and you might see a line trending upwards for those who are gold members. If you're not a gold member, if you're not a member, go and check out the breakout tracker. It's out now and been updated. Link in the description below. But anyway, Darcy Wilmot is the first podcast. I'm rattled at the moment. First defender I want to talk about in the breakout contenders. 75 average last season. I guess my question is, does he break out this season? Because we had Zorko go to the halfback line last year and kind of eat up all the scoring back there. And then we do have Kadeem Coleman going back. So I guess the trends for him are nice for Darcy Wilmot, but can we see it going any further with these factors kind of being played?
Yeah, I don't know if he's a guy that's going to go that high ceiling like that 90 plus. I don't know. I think he's going to be pretty serviceable and he's probably see a bump there. But I mean, I just still see him as that handy defender guy, D3, D4 in your keeper. That I was actually surprised. You might have been surprised this year. I think we talked about him last year on the pod that he was putting up some decent scores that sort of surprised us. the last year. So I think he's just going to be a solid, like that's my opinion, is just going to be a solid defender. I just don't know whether he can just take it to that elite defender level.
We haven't seen the ceiling yet.
Yes.
You know, we've only seen we've seen consistency with that kind of high floor. And I think that's probably what he's more likely going to be, that high floor player.
Yeah.
But I just don't know if he's going to be that kind of big 100 plus, 90 plus kind of guy.
That's sort of where I'm at with it.
Yeah. I think the Kadeem Coleman return is interesting as well, because he doesn't do anything but that role, really, that halfback loose role. When someone like Harris Andrews is getting all the attention, he will just, you know, sneak out the back and get all the kicks type thing. Whereas someone like Wilmot can actually defend, but he can also break lines and stuff like that as well. So, yeah, I guess we haven't seen enough evidence to say he's going to be a big scorer. That's not to mean like he won't be, because he does play the right type of role and does play the right style. It's just that, like, I think he's very versatile for Brisbane, and they could use him in a few different ways, that's all. The big name at the end of last season was Lawson Humphreys. So he averaged 70.9 from the 9 games he played, and he kind of burst onto the scene mid-season. What do you think about him? Is he like going to be an accumulator type as well, or is he that kind of class player as well?
He definitely has that class, and he obviously came on like real quick, and that always, I mean, I always like to pick up these kids that are like, you know, they've got more pedigree and they're high draft picks, because you just have a bit more faith in them. But he does look like he has got something, like he's a pretty talented kid. So I can actually see him, like if you're sort of comparing them, I can actually see him, he probably does have a bit more of a ceiling there. So yeah, I guess it's probably just the whole, just Chris Scott also worries me just with like just changes and just him in the side. But I think, you know, he obviously played, was it 9 games or something at the end of the year? And I can see, like, so he went at 70. I mean, I can see him going, you know, can he go 80s to 90? Like, I feel like he's got more of a chance to do that at Geelong. Like, he's got more of a ceiling that you can see. So yeah.
My only concern is like with Geelong, like apart from maybe Mitch Duncan, I don't know, like they don't play a style that lends to huge fantasy scoring as well, but he's definitely got the tools to do so. It's just that, like, I've just got the gut feel he might be that quality over quantity type. That's my only concern with him at the moment. But he looks like a gun in terms of just real football sense. And generally, like, guns have a better chance at translating to being a fantasy scorer just because they want the ball in their hands and stuff like that a lot more. So he's definitely on very high on my watch list, and, you know, he's one that will go early in my draft if he's available. But yeah, I'm just not 100% convinced he's going to be a huge scorer. That's all. Another kind of breakout contender, and it's kind of strange having this guy after 9 games or something like that, 6 games. Logan Evans averaged 69.6 last season. He's a mid-season draftee, but I guess can he go another level this year, or will he suffer the second-year blues? I guess. Do you think Houston leaving means more responsibility for him, or what do you think?
I think, you know, he's going to settle himself in the side. Like, I think he's in our best 22. I just don't know.
Did he play every game since getting drafted?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, straight in.
Straight in. Again, I just don't think I think he's going to be, like, serviceable. Like, he averaged 69. I think he can go 70s. But I just don't know. He just doesn't seem like the guy that's going to... I mean, you know, he's only young, but I just think he's a solid player. I think he will be there. Again, it's the mid-season draftees that are just, they show something and it's hard to have faith in. I don't know. I always want to see more with these sort of types of players.
Yeah, and I think what I said earlier about the Port defence, and no one really is a big scorer back there except for Houston, and he's gone. So it's either a factor of, I guess we'll really find out whether Houston is a class above or they do have a one-man distributor role. If that's the case, though, I still don't think Logan Evans is going to be that guy. It's going to be Kane Farrell over him. So maybe that's the case. Or your boy Josh Sin might come in. Didn't you say you saw him fall over at training the other day?
Yeah, maybe we'll chat about that in a
bit. But anyway, I've never been a Josh Sin fan. Another younger player, Luke Nankervis, is another guy I like. He averaged 65.5 last season, and he just plays the right style for fantasy. And he showed good signs last year because he did have that top score of 111 last season, and then had a couple score in the 60s. But, you know, he had that pretty high floor as well, like 60 pretty much every other week from there. What are your thoughts with him, with the coming arrival lead going back? Do you reckon there's any scope for a breakout this season, or will we be waiting a little bit longer?
I feel like we're going to be waiting, but he does show, like, you want to see this from that score, like the 111, like
Yeah.
I remember he was pushing up a bit as well, like on the wing as well, and playing that role. I just feel like, can Cummings stay fit? Like, he's got the hammy at the moment. I hope so. But obviously Laird is training back there. I feel like they are going to be... But, he's like... Luke Nankervis is that age bracket that they need to invest in as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just like... It's hard to tell. But, I think if if you're in a dynasty league, I would think I would be keeping someone like that. Because he's shown that he can actually do it. Like, that's what you want to see in these, like one of these young kids, is the ceiling score.
Yeah.
And that's always a good sign. I guess that goes back to your breakout tracker, and it's probably popping up as, those scores that he has popped. So I just don't know whether it would be this year with those arrivals. But yeah, again, injuries could take coming in. You don't know.
Yeah, 100%. So that would leave some scope for Nankervis to go better. I think he's just one. He might be a stash option for now, but I think in a few seasons' time we might see him being a decent fantasy scorer. Next one on the list, Josh Weddle, 59.1 average last season. For me, I think this goes two ways, really, for this season anyway. I think for the future, he's pretty much guaranteed to be gone. I guess the comparison he always gets from is like Nick Blakey, who took 7 years to produce an 80+ season. So, and he looks to be a similar type player. But my thinking is that it may depend on what Hawthorn do with Sicily this year. So they've got two key defenders now down back. So they've kind of fixed their issues there. Sicily was kind of playing a quasi key defender role last season. So that problem's gone. So what happens next? Do they put Sicily back into that halfback role where he just accumulates and kind of plays that third tall but just floats in there? Or do they send Sicily forward like we saw at the end of last season?
In the final.
Yeah, the finals and stuff like that, and be more of a target up forward, return to his roots type thing. If that happens, then I can see Weddle slotting into Sicily's role because they're kind of similar type players, like similar height, similar skills, that sort of stuff. If not, Weddle's probably got a bit more dash on him as well. If that halfback flank, he could be more damaging for them. Do you agree with that? It kind of depends on what we see with Sicily.
I agree. He's like that perfect utility type, isn't he? And I think I saw something actually in Twitter that he's like they've tried him in the ruck as well. Like I think he actually last year.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So I guess that's what's happening. He's just sort of he's playing everywhere around the ground. So it all depends on that role.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think he was compared to Sicily early on because of exactly like the intercept role and the dash and the halfback. So I think it's hard one to tell. I think if you're in a dynasty league, I'd be stashing him away. But he could be someone that gains another position, like a mid. Like if he plays, he's played everywhere. Like they trial him around a lot of spots. So what did he go out last year? 59.
Yeah. He needs to kind of break it to that next level if that's what if he's going to be a decent fantasy scorer. I think it's just completely dependent on other players more so than anything within his control. That's all. Moving on to Judd McVie, 59 average last season, so pretty much the same as Josh Weddle there. But the interesting thing was he was trialled in the midfield at the end of last season. Now, I got a bit of a theory with this one, and at that time there was a lot of talk about Houston going to Melbourne as well, so I felt like they might have been trying to find a different spot for him to kind of play if that was going to happen, given that he's a pretty good user of the ball. But, I think with Houston not coming, he might be going back to that half-back line, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing for him, given how deep that midfield is at Melbourne. I know we've had Petrarca injured again, but hopefully he's all right by round one. But if you look at the half-back line, like Salem's always injured, Bowie, however Dossie has ruined the saying of his name for me, but Bowie, hasn't really come on yet, plus he's always injured. I think they want to play Trent Rivers in the midfield. I think there's a spot there across halfback where he could actually accumulate a fair bit of footy this season. What do you think?
Definitely. He's your boy. Like you've called it out last year as well.
Yeah, big fan of him last year.
Big fan, and he popped some scores there. And yeah, I mean, going back to that article that we're talking about where I saw Moraes, like they're trialing like Caleb Windsor back there as well now. So it's just they're trying to find that role. So they've obviously identified that with them not grabbing Houston. So I think it's a good shout, and they obviously have high stocks on him. So yeah, I mean, he would be one that you'd keep maybe redraft late. in a keeper.
I've got my eye on him pretty closely. It's probably a lot of these players you're going to be watching preseason notes, that first kind of trial match, all that sort of stuff. Like we're speculating now, and we won't really know until we see those kind of reports come out and watch that footage and the KO minis or whatever they're called. And seeing all those kind of seeing all the preseason action actually happen. But yeah, I've got a fair inkling that might be the case where he becomes a much more prominent distributor off that halfback flank for Melbourne next season. Brady Hoff, I guess he always is touted as someone with potential, but he actually went backwards last season from 61 average the year before to 58.5 last season. I don't know. What do you think with Brady Hoff?
I'm like you. I think he's got so much potential. It's just like, is he going to take that step? I'm the same. I'm not really sold on him. Like, Witherden's gone now. He was sort of in and out of side. Does that help him?
And then Baker.
Does Baker go back
there?
Yeah,
I think there's talk of him going back.
He's got the talent. It's just like, it's really hard to say.
I think you just need West Coast to be a lot better before you can just really worry about any players like him. They're just going to have to get 3 or 4 years worth of development before any of them start getting decent scorers. Like maybe if Duggan spends more time in the midfield, that might open up something for him. But it's just another one of those players where I don't really have a lot of faith in, really. So Brady Hoff, I know, just not sold on him at the moment. Your boy Josh Sin, the guy who spends a bit of time laying on the ground, you reckon, at training?
I think it's going to be, a lot of people know I'm a big Sin fan.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I just remember watching him at preseason training last year and legit watched him almost like battle to hit his foot with his ball drop, missed his foot. So I don't have much faith in the man's talent to actually get a game. First of all, I have no doubts that he could be a good fantasy scorer. I just think he's going to butcher the ball too much to actually be a mainstay in the side. But I don't know. A lot of people think he's going to be the Dan Houston. Not a lot of people, but I think early on people were saying he could be the Dan Houston replacement. I honestly think Ryan Burton's ahead of him though. So I don't know. Sin, have you changed your mind, or are you still going to back him in?
Yeah, I went to training on Friday and he slipped over and I was just like, and Louis was with me and he was like, there you go, Geordie.
Your boy.
Look, last year I did a gig for the 2004 Premiership thing at Albion. Celebration. And Koshi was there and he was chatting to us and he was just saying lots of good things about Sin. And obviously they were at this point, they were like, we're looking at trading Houston if we can get 2 first rounders, which we didn't end up getting.
Didn't happen. Yeah.
And he was real hot on it. And he goes, we've got guys coming through. We've got Sin. We've got, he just kept banging on about Sin. And, we traded up for him. I don't know. I've still got faith. He's a high pick.
Yeah.
I feel like he's that guy that could take that step, but it's just, I can see him playing at least 15 plus games this year if he can stay fit.
Yeah, right.
I think he's going to cement himself. Whether he's going to be a fantasy scorer is another thing, but I think he's actually going to get some game time this year. That's my call on it.
I reckon I would trust Koshi's opinion on football as far as I could probably throw him, I reckon. God, I hate that guy. But anyway, on to Kaneen Cohen. We've kind of already mentioned him, but we can basically rinse and repeat everything that we had about him last season as being a breakout contender just because he got injured. I guess the big thing, we kind of touched on it before, but how does Brisbane line up with him around, I guess, around him with Zorko? Does Zorko stay in defence and keep racking up, or do they put him back forward? Do they use him back in the midfield, or is it just a who knows situation?
It's hard, because as soon as he went down, Zorko was the one that went back, and that's what changed. They needed that speed off, and that probably changed where they were in the season. He really
probably won him a flag in the end.
Won him a flag, you know? So Kitty, I love Kitty. I think he's super talented. It's just he's just got to get on the park and get some fitness, and he probably needs a full good season. Yeah. I don't know whether he's going to go big numbers this year because he probably needs that season just to play 22 games.
Yeah,
I think Zorko. Yeah, who knows? They both could be back there.
Yeah,
or he could be that forward role again.
My thoughts with Zorko, would he be a player that you target if you're a contending team, given that he's a defender, given that we know he can go 110 plus, or do you think this could be the year where he pings that hammy, misses 6 weeks, and then could retire at the end of the year? Now he's got the flag, doesn't really give a shit anymore. What do you think?
Yeah, didn't he just sign that 1 year deal because they it's weird. Like he won a flag and he's like, yeah, I'll go on again. Maybe because he wanted to go back to back.
Yeah, I guess.
But
so he probably is going to retire at the end of the year anyway. So, but
I reckon.
I'm thinking more so like, does he retire early if he gets injured or something like that? But
I think if you can sell him like in the keeper, like yeah,
yeah,
he probably is that guy that you're going to target if you're contending and you're selling for.
Yeah, if you're not in
if
contention.
you're not into it, but look, Kitty's like there's talks about him being right for round one, and there's also talks that he might not get up for it.
Yeah.
So it's a wait and see.
Definitely. You got a bit of a smoky to finish off the breakout contenders with.
Yeah, I was just looking through the list. I just read on Twitter that Sam de Koning is training as a ruck in the preseason. And so I just looked into some of his numbers, and round 15 and 19, when he was 80% CBAs, he averaged 87.4
Yep.
as a ruck. So that's pretty handy if you can get him as a late draft smoky. That's if he gets the role.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was like round 19, and then Stanley came back in. Like, I thought Stanley was done.
Yeah.
And then he actually had a pretty good finals series. They got Conway there. I just don't know what they're doing with Conway. I just feel like they give him a shot, then they drop him, and then I don't know where they're at with him. Like, is they trying to give him a few more years, or is he not ready? So, yeah, like, do they play de Koning there? He's obviously training there. It's just a late draft smoky. Like, if he can average 80,
yeah.
He's going to be pretty like low down on the board.
I think he might be. I don't know. I feel like he's way too important for them in defence, though.
Yeah.
And they did get smashed in the ruck when he was playing there, so he's probably not. I don't know. I think Conway is the future for them. So, but it is a good smoky, and it's probably a good one to pick up like later on in drafts, and then hopefully there's a period where Conway gets injured, like there was last year, or a few players go down, and then you do get that bump for 4 to 6 weeks, and it could win you some pivotal matchups in that time as well. We'll move on to I'll read out the gold members now. For the gold members out there, for the last few years, I've just read everyone out, year after year after year. I've decided this year I'm only going to read out new gold members, if that's okay with everyone out there, just because it takes so long and it's a lot of record keeping to do each week. If you're really upset about it and you want your name read out again, email me or something and I'll read you out, I promise. But hopefully everyone's cool with me just reading out new gold members from now on, because it is a bit time consuming, and I think it wastes a bit of time on the podcast each week where we could be talking about other stuff. But thank you to the following new gold members who have joined up in the off season, and that's Adam Ben, Brad Marsland, David Browning, Chris Stewart, Gary Boyer, James O'Brien, James Colaris, Matt Jones, Mark Calls, and Peter Bakes. Thank you to all of those people that have signed up as a member. Bit of a big year for me. I'm not at my job anymore. I was basically told to choose between doing this or going back to work full time, because I couldn't do it while I was working full time, and I chose doing this instead. So yeah. We'll see how that pans out. It's just a year, a bit of a risk, so we'll see how it goes. But if you want the podcast to keep going and well into the future and ensure its survival, please sign up as a member and support the show. It basically just doesn't operate with members' support, and the only way it's going right now is because of the members' support so far. So I think it works out to be less than $5 a month as well when you add it up over 12 months. So and that's it for the gold membership. That is as well. It's cheaper if you're a silver or a bronze. So if you want to support the podcast and make sure it keeps going in the future, please sign up and support it. There's a link in the description below, or just head to keepleaguepod.com.au and check out the membership options there. And then you get access to all the bonus resources as well, which make you a awesome Keeper League coach. So anyways, we'll move on to some of the stash options here. First one on the list here is Joel Frazier. He's just a player I'm not sure if he breaks into the lineup this year. And if he does, I think there might be too many other players that are going to be eating up scoring for him to do anything effectively. But what I really liked about him last year was just that use off the halfback later on in the season, and it looked like a pretty fantasy-friendly role. I don't know. What do you think? Do you reckon there's any chance that in the future he could be a scorer?
I really like him. He, I was, again, looking at numbers, came out with 3 games, averaged 82, popped to 115. So, it's, straight away shows that he can do it. Apparently training in the house centre at the moment as well, winning the 2K trials.
Love that.
So, yeah, I'd love to see him cement a spot. I think he's... I think he's got the talent to do it. Again, it's just, trying to get that down. And, what happens with some of those other guys off the halfback there, Johannesson and Dale, etc. So, you
think Richards is a full-time midfielder these days.
Yep.
But, so there's there's still too much going on, I think, in the halfback line for him to be a huge scorer straight away. But yeah, definitely one. I would have said break into the Caleb Daniel spot, but he didn't have a spot last year, so it doesn't really matter. Ari Schoenmaker, next one on the list. Do you think he locks down a permanent role this season?
I reckon he does. I think, again, looking at this, Bonner's gone, Battle's gone.
Yep.
I think he's going to play that third tall down back, hopefully. That's what we're hearing out of the preseason.
Yep.
Battle went at like 70. That's, he's obviously an experienced player. I think Shoemaker's got the pedigree. I think he's got a spot there for him. And there's talks that they could flick Caminiti back, but they lost Membry. I think they need a Caminiti up forward to support King. So, I think there's a role there, and whether he can, whether he can break out. It's just, what year could that happen? And I think, there's, just him learning the game style as well and things like that.
I think Sinclair's got one more year of huge scoring, and then I think we start to see a bit of a transition between probably Schoenmaker just eating up a few more points off that halfback line. So I reckon just give him one more season to lock down the role and become a permanent member of St Kilda's side. And then I reckon the following year, 2026, is when we're going to see his fantasy breakout, I think. But he's one with huge underage scores, so everyone's pretty excited about him as well. Lockie Cowan, I keep going back to him. I cop a bit of shit from a few listeners on the Discord about how I love him too much, but liked him as an underage. He was a solid 80 scorer. Plays the right kind of role off the halfback flank. But the thing with him is Doherty, I guess he's probably more of a midfielder these days, but you've got Sard, Newman, McGovern. They're all the wrong side of 30. Someone's going to have to pick up the slack off that halfback line pretty soon, and he's playing on it, and he could be the guy who gets a fantasy-friendly role in the near future. I just don't think I know he's coming into his third season. I just don't think it's going to be this year, that's all. So he's a stash option for me. Do you think that's fair?
He looks good.
Yeah,
he looks good. He's your boy, and I like it.
Most of the time, my boys do hit. You know, they get there eventually. So let's wait and see.
And he is a Morris medalist, I think.
That's the one. Yeah, I can never remember.
Pretty good track record on that.
Now, is that the TAC Cup one, or is that the under 18 champs one? I reckon it's the TAC Cup one. Isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, let's go on TAC Cup. What's it called now? Coates Talent League.
Yeah.
Sorry. Josh Goda is the next one. So he's had a couple good games in his short career, and I guess, do you remember his debut game?
I did. He came in late, right? And he
I think it was the last game of the season,
yeah.
I think. Yeah, and got an 80-odd. I think a lot of people are kind of living off the hype of that game and expecting that to be happen more often. But, yeah, I think there's too many guys on that half-back line at North Melbourne. We talked about Caleb Daniel before. How does someone like Zach Fisher even fit in this year,
I think Fisher's playing twos.
Yeah, exactly. So
or he has to go wing or half forward or something.
And I think Josh Goda's probably in the same boat at this stage because I find it even hard. I know they've said it, but I find it even hard to fit McKercher in the midfield this season as well there, unless something like Simkin just plays permanent forward and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting. So regardless, I think that means Josh Goda's way down the pecking order.
Yeah. I like him. I think he's when he came on, and like you said, he looked good. And there was lots of comparisons to a lot of those other defenders that could then go into the midfield. But North midfield is just so stacked, and now they're halfbacks. They've even got guys like Hardiman and these other guys that they've drafted. So it's just he's coming off an Achilles. It would be cool to see what he can do. But I agree with you. He just got to establish himself. Yeah, definitely. In that side.
Definitely. Do you know much about Sard El Hawley?
Only a little bit. Obviously, he's a mid-season draftee, and I think he's 23, so he's a little bit more mature age. Obviously puts up a bit of numbers.
Yeah.
I've been reading a lot of Track Watch articles, and he was playing on a wing in the B side on the weekends for the Essendon team. So with Brad Scott, I'm just not sure. You've got Nick Martin. Does he go to the wing? You've got Archie Roberts as well. I think those guys were in the, obviously they were in the A side. Archie Roberts was on the wing.
Yeah, right.
So, it's just, you got Dersmer as well.
Yeah, he'll be back I guess he was injured at the end of last season, but that's another spot to kind of come back in. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of hype, and looking at his VFL numbers, I think he averaged 100 in the VFL last season, and before he came to Essendon, before he got drafted, he was averaging even more than that. I think he kind of went down a bit after he came to Essendon, so I don't know whether it was a bit of a minor tweak of the role or whatever, or just playing in an AFL side, he got less of the footy or whatever. But yeah, I think the only way I could see it, just look at that half back line. You've got Ridley, who can play more defensive, but he scores pretty well. You've got Mason Redmond, who can kind of play a bit taller, but again, he scores okay. Andy McGrath is just like an 80 average guy every season type thing. Like, how do they? And I guess they had Nick Martin in there last year. He got added to it, and still he scored okay. But like, it kind of hinges on where Nick Martin goes, and if there is that return to the wing, there is a chance for him to come in. But I still think you're just not going to see some guy plucked out of the VFL. Didn't get a game last season, and then just going to come in and be a huge scorer this season. So for that reason, given the hype around him, I think he's worth drafting as a stash option, but not expecting too much this season.
Yeah.
The last one on the list here is Jacob Ryan. So only reason I've got him here is that he's that fantasy junior. We're still living off his fantasy pedigree as a youngster, but I just can't see him breaking in with Houston now on the side. Perryman, I guess there's probably more scope for him to play in the midfield as well, but I still think they rate him, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, he was a high draft pick, wasn't he? I don't know. I always just like to see something from these guys early on. And I think he's only played the one game.
Yeah, and he got concussed in it.
And he got concussed, yeah, unfortunately. But I don't know. I just feel like he's down the pecking order. And I think, obviously they obviously still rate him. But it's just, I mean, I like to see... I feel like if you're a good kid, you're going to play some games in your first or second year.
Yeah.
And he just hasn't had that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on to some senior players now. So the first one, we'll go through those guys quickly. So I guess we talk about keeper leagues, and everyone thinks you got to draft the younger guys, and that's the way you kind of win them. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to win a flag, you need some of the senior players because they're the established scorers. And the ones that kind of push over 30, you can often get a lot cheaper in drafts because people want to cash in on them and trade them out for draft picks or whatever before they retire. So I've got 4 on the list here. One of them's pretty funny. So Mitch Duncan, does he have another fantasy year in him, or do you reckon it's time to dump him?
I would dump him.
Yeah.
I actually traded him and got Darcy Wilson.
Yeah, right.
But with other stuff.
Yeah, okay. A few extra bits and pieces.
But I think, if you can draft him late or something, maybe. But if you're keeping him, I would just dump him.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. If I can get him late in the draft, because I've got no defenders in my keepers.
Yeah.
I've got Carl Amon, who I'm worried about, just because with all the additions to their defense there as well. And then I think I've got who else have I got? Miles Bergman, my next best. So, he's probably someone I could fill out my back line with later on in the draft if we can get him. And that's probably where I'm looking at him for. I guess we talked about Jake Lloyd before, but do you think anything changes under Cox, or do you think we're going to see him on the wing again next season?
It's just so hard.
Yeah.
I can't say I can see him falling away, and I can see him going being solid and going back. It's just what does Cox do? Yeah.
Well, answer my keeper selection question. Who would you keep, Jake Lloyd or Miles Bergman, if you had to choose between those two?
Well, you're contending, right?
Yeah. I still think Lloyd probably averages around whatever Miles Bergman's
I feel
worst
like
output
Lloyd,
is.
you got to keep... If you're contending...
Yeah. I'm leaning towards Bergman at the moment, just because I think they'll probably average 75, but there is a chance Bergman gets traded at the end of the year, and it could be a bit of a nicer role.
I feel like if Bergman gets traded and he can play midfield...
Yeah.
Because, I think he could be a good defensive mid.
Or just even looser on the half-back line, not as defensive. But I guess defending is his forte. But anyway, Jake Lloyd's probably game over for him anyway.
It's a bit of pre-season watch.
Yeah.
You've got a bit of time for you.
Oh, yeah. If he's sitting on the half-back line, I've got until the week before the season starts. Okay. So I can watch the pre-season stuff.
I think that's what I do because it's a hard... Yeah.
Yeah.
Just which way you want to go.
Next one, Stephen May. Does he have another season like last season in him, or is he too old and slow now?
I think it depends on how Melbourne go. I feel like if they're contending and they're back up there, he should be solid, right?
Well, he was good last year when they weren't contending.
Right. What did he average? 80?
It was close to 80, yeah. High 70s.
I mean, he's still a gun player, right?
But he's still going to be someone that you're not going to keep, and you're just going to pick him up late in the draft no matter what. But he's another one of these guys that I'll be looking at to round out my defense with later on in the draft. And the last one I got on the list is Rory Atkins. So... will he get a game at Port, or are we just eating a salary cap as a favour to get the coaches across the line?
I've added. I went to training last week.
Yeah, you said what's happening?
He high-fived Ken. He was getting he actually looked really good.
This is my thing. Actually, I got a funny Ratkin story as well. Went down to training with my son to get some autographs and some photos and stuff. And he was getting a photo with Miles Bergman. and the rat was standing right next to him and like just looking kind of lonely, like no one talking to him or anything. So I was like, "I'll jump in, rat, get a photo." And so now my son's just got this photo with Miles Bergman and Rory Atkins. This is the most random like combination of players. But anyway, the rat has been a good fantasy scorer in the right role. It's just that when he's scoring well in fantasy, he's not playing well enough to be so confident that he's going to get picked each week.
Yes.
Like he'll get heaps of kicks, but half of them will go to the other team. Or they'll just be little dinks over the top and he'll run to get the next one and pop into a hole. So he does play the fantasy-friendly style. And I think Ken Hinckley will try to prove that he wasn't just a cap dump. You know, there was method to his madness and all that sort of stuff, and I'm a genius kind of thing, and give him like a run of 5 or 6 games. I reckon it's going to happen.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Just from watching the training, like that's just the vibe that I got. And even Louis said it to me. Louis not really a big fan of Rat, I don't think. And he was like, Rat's going to play. He's like, Rat's going to play some games this year. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Like straight, like, you know. And yeah, I think if you can pick that run, that 4 or 5 week run where you pick him up, you loophole, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Rat is going to play. I don't think it's not going to last for a long time, but you might get like a 5-week 80 average out of him. And, you know, that could get you into finals or something like that. So maybe one to think about picking up later in drafts. Let's look at some rookies quickly. We won't harp on about them too much because we have done a rookie, a draftee bonus episode that's available to the members. So if you want to get access to that, sign up to that now. But the first, I got 3 here that I like the look of. And obviously the big one is Toby Travalia. He was a first round draft pick, I think pick 8 or 9 to St Kilda. Halfback fantasy type. Again, I'm just not sure how he fits in with Nazai Wangani Miller, Ari Shoemaker, Jack Sinclair. I'm not sure how he fits in straight away, but being a first rounder, they probably will blood him. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
There's big hype on him. Like, there is, I mean, yeah, I'm reading articles and they're like, he could play midfield as well. Like, this is some of the stuff that's coming out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in my classic and super coach, I've got him picked there, like D5, D6. I feel like they're gonna blood him and he's gonna play. It's just where does he fit? He does look like is he ready made? Like he's pretty skinny, right?
Well, my concern is with him and looking at his underage numbers in his underage games. He played not a lot, but he played a bit of time on the wing, and I feel like that's a position that they kind of, if Wilson's going to go into the middle, they're playing blokes like Ryan Burns, Mason Wood. They probably want to blood someone kind of new. I feel like he could sit on the wing and be really good sitting on the wing as well. So good that they might keep him there for a while. So that's my only concern with him. But if he gets that half-back role, then he's going to be, like, I have no doubts he'll be a fantasy player. It's just that whether he gets it with the personnel they've got back there already, maybe, you know, after someone like Sinclair retires, he does go back there. But I just got this weird gut feel that he might end up as a wingman and it won't be great for fantasy, that's all. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Next one's Bo Allen. Decent underage scorer. I think he had 84 average from the under-18 champs. Do you think he's like a long-term Elliot Yeo replacement, kind of that midfield defender? What do you think?
I think that's what they're touting him to be. I think straight away the scores are going to be, he's going to take a while.
It's West Coast. Like no one comes into West Coast and scores well.
He's going to take a while. I feel like he's going to be quite a few years you're going to hold him.
Yeah.
But, he should go right. Like, he's pretty highly rated. He was the top pick. Like, they traded. I mean, West Coast did some silly things with their draft picks, but he was their first pick because, obviously, homegrown talent, and they got him at, pick 12 or something.
Yeah.
So, they obviously rate him highly. Again, in my classic side at the moment on the bench. I think they're going to blood him. But, I reckon you might be a bit of just one to... It might take a few years.
Yeah, I think so too. I think all those West Coast kids... They might get better this year, but I still don't think any of them are going to burst through. It's going to be like Richmond. Like, I just don't see how those kids are actually going to get their hands on the footy to kind of get enough the ball. West Coast will be doing everything they can just to not get smashed, and it won't be just giving them a kick just for the sake of it, I don't think. Riley Bice, the last one on the list for the rookies. He's a mature age player out of the Werribee Football Factory that seems to be producing a lot of mature age players at the moment, but he's a halfback type, and I've got here, he could be the long-term Jake Lloyd replacement, I reckon. So he can play on the wing as well, so just another one there.
So you've got 1 week before the season to lock in your keepers.
Yeah.
It'd be good to see, just to
What's
see
happening.
what's going on. Does he play? Like, Does he take Lloyd's role?
I'm not confident, to be honest. Like, I'm fully ready to drop Lloyd. And it's going to be sad, but, you know, I've got a lot of good years out of him. So he has been my boy for a long time now. All right, let's finish it off. We're about to hit the hour mark. I think we're at about 52 minutes. So let's have a look at the listener questions at Russ 2468. I'm dyslexic. How do you feel about Jarman Impey?
I feel like Impey he's just a 78, 80 guy. I don't really see him like going up or down. He's handy in a keeper. I've had him actually the last 2 years just like in a redrafted him. It's helped me win flags. I don't see any upside there really.
My thinking is they've got to slot 2 key defenders into that defence. How does the reshuffle happen? What does Scrimshaw do? What does Weddle do? What does Sicily do? What does Hardwick do? You know what my gut feel is with Impey? He's not best 22.
Really?
Yeah. I have a bit of or he's going back forward. That's my thoughts with him.
That's huge.
Yeah, well, he's 29 now, almost 30.
Yeah.
And I think Carl Amon's probably the better quality player off that halfback line if they're going to use him. They got Weddle as the other tall halfback guy. Did they use him as lockdown? Did they use Hardwick as lockdown? They could use Hardwick forward more as well. But I just don't know how they fit everyone into that defence. And I think he's probably the first on the chopping block to go if they're trying to squeeze 2 new defenders in. What do you think?
It's a fair take. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like they signed him up. I think pretty good deal. So obviously he captained actually last year.
Yeah, right. Maybe
like,
not then.
like that Indigenous round. I think he was a skipper.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. It's probably a bit different, but yeah, I don't know.
It's hard, yeah.
Like I'm just looking at the side, and I feel like if I'm looking at defence, I'd probably take Hardwick as the better lockdown defender. Granted, he can go forward.
Yeah.
But then you look at the taller, kind of third tall, Weddle's probably, or Sicily going to take, obviously, even Scrimshaw, you know, those kind of guys. And then what do you do with Amon then? Does Amon go back to a wing or something like that as well? But I don't know, it seems to be pretty covered everywhere. It's going to be very interesting next season in that defence, but I'm just kind of not going near any of those those kind of fringe Hawthorn defenders, or they're not the first pick kind of guys. Anyway, at Crazy SO4, do we sell Nick Martin now? I think that's a bit reactionary, don't you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. Like he put some absolute massive ones on last year.
All the hype, all the talk is he's going to go back to the wing and he's going to suck.
He's still going to be good though. Like he's still going to be. He might not be a 107 defender, but I feel like he's taken his game to that level where he's still going to be a good scorer for fantasy. You could take the punt if you're going to get someone like a gun kid.
Yeah.
Like
you're going to get Jagger Smith.
Yeah, you're going to get someone like that, or like an Ashcroft or Levi or something, and you know that you want to take a punt on it.
Yeah.
Then maybe, but like, he's still going to, even if next year he's a mid only, or he's a mid forward or something. Yeah. I feel like he's established himself as a good scorer now. Yeah. He's definitely a sell high if you want. Like, I don't think he's backing up last season his numbers, but even as a winger, he's still probably a 90 plus guy, and he's 90 plus defender for this season. And then still a 90-plus midfielder makes any midfield in the league. So, put the feelers out, see what you can get, but don't be too discouraged if you have to keep him, because he'll still be fine. At Puzzle Picks, are Weddle and Will Powell worthy of keeping? Unsure whether Powell's average goes down to Noble and Rioli, most likely taking his back flank. What do you think? I'm just going to go off this as like 12 keepers. Yeah. I would probably drop them both. Yeah. It depends how deep your league is and what players you got. I don't think Will Powell is going to go any better. Like he went at 75, I think. Yeah. I think he's probably going to do that again. So, you know, they got Noble, Rioli. There's actually like people reckon Rioli's going to go 90 plus. Yeah. In the community. So, I think Powell is just going to be the same. Weddle, I guess we talked about him before as a sort of a stash option. I'd probably just look at redrafting these sorts of guys. Yeah. That's if you're keeping 12. Yeah. If you've got the room to keep someone like Weddle, it's more so Powell him off. I don't want anything to do with him. Yeah. I do think that Noble and Rioli are going to shadow him. I think if things go Weddle's way, he could have a breakout season. It just depends what Sicily does, I think, for mine mainly. If Sicily is being used forward and watch preseason games and stuff like that, if that kind of does come to fruition, then I think Weddle could have a big year.
But yeah, it just depends on how many you keep. If you're going 12, then maybe no. But if you're keeping like 16, 18, then it's probably a yes.
Yes,
I reckon.
I agree.
Yeah. So Rowan TAFM, Zach Guthrie intrigues me. How do you see his role in a Geelong side that's just added more good young talent? Does he take over from Stewart as the primary distributor in the next year or two? Any thoughts on Zach Guthrie?
Oh, Zach Guthrie's, yeah, he's not a player that I go for, but what did he go at last year, like 85 or something?
Don't know if it was that big, but it was around the 80 mark, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he feels like he's cemented himself in there, and yeah, I mean, I don't really see him going anything more. Like, I've never really been a big Zach Guthrie. What is he, 26?
Yeah, he went at 75 last year.
Yeah,
so.
okay.
Yeah,
he might have a bump, but I just don't feel like he's gonna, like, Stewart is still signed for like a few, like probably 3 or more years. I reckon.
Yeah,
like.
But then, like, you've got guys like Jack Bowes who probably should cement a spot on that, like, should just sit back there as well. And again, I'll bring it up. Like, Geelong never play that super fantasy-friendly game style as well. So someone like him who's probably, I don't know, would he even be in their best 10 players, you know what I mean? Like, he's probably in the lower side of his teams. Like, they're kind of guys that I avoid in the non-fantasy friendly teams anyway. But that's just me. He's a handy acquisition, but I just don't think he goes any bigger. Maybe 80 if everything goes his way.
Yeah.
But that's about it. And at TTQ03, could we see Iden get a bump from Perryman and Cumming leaving the team? What are your thoughts?
Iden was a guy, like, I remember last year he might have been too good for the podcast, or he was just on that cusp of
he had a week where he probably got there.
Yeah.
Like, he qualified. Yeah.
He was actually pretty solid, like, he had a little bit of a run there.
Yeah.
What did he go at, 72?
Yeah.
I just don't know if I think what we talked about before, I think Ash is the one that's going to get the bump.
Yeah.
But, you're looking at Iden, like, there's some pretty good floor scores there. Like, if you've got a D4, 5.
Yeah.
That's pretty handy.
He's a more than serviceable defender. It's just like, if he does get a bump, he's going to go from like a 72 to like a 76 average, I think. And that's not going to be massive, but he's a guy that you could play at your D4, D5 position and you'd be happy with that, I think, because he'll get you 60 every week. I think there was only 1 or 2 games where he actually went, maybe 3 games where he went under 60, you know? So,
and that's good.
Yeah, take that. You're playing that on field.
Exactly.
You're playing that on field most weeks in a deep league for sure. Anyways, that is a wrap on the first episode of the year. Just about hit the hour mark at the moment. Geordie, got any gigs coming up that people in Adelaide can come see you?
Yeah, so I'm at the Moseley Beach Club every Thursday until the end of March.
Yep.
So that's out there, which is awesome. And then, just lots of pubs and stuff in between that.
I imagine during Gather Round you'd have a few gigs, yeah?
Yeah, nothing confirmed yet because they'll be, like, once they sort of sort out the, like the
venues and stuff like that.
Venues and stuff, then I will. Pretty keen for Gather Round, actually.
Just thinking for our interstate listeners, there'll be a few coming over for Gather Round. Get around, see one of Geordie's gigs. Be good fun, I reckon.
Yeah, that sounds wicked.
Yeah, go say good day, talk fantasy with him. But yeah. Anyways, get around our stuff. keeperleaguepod.com.au or at keeperleaguepod on all the socials. In terms of premium resources, what have we got? We've got the drafty analysis guide that came out last year. There's a podcast that went with that. I brought out my community draft rankings. That's going pretty well. Yeah, like there's a few funny ones. I think the community sometimes gets a bit carried away. Like for some reason, Luke Jackson was the number 2 ranked forward, but he's gone back down now as well. So like there's a few weird things in there that kind of happen, but it's really good fun to see what the community actually think. If you're not aware of it, what actually happens is like the user gets served 3 players and you've got to choose which you would draft first in a keeper league, and your answers kind of determine the ranks. It's just a good way to get the community to vote on an order of rankings without having to do heaps of mock drafts or do a full list of rankings and stuff like that. Everyone can just kind of contribute 5-10 minutes of work at a time and rank some players in that way. So if you haven't checked that out, go have a look. And also the mock draft simulator is actually out again. I've updated that and that's redone. This year you can add your own keepers to it as well.
I went ham on that last year.
Yeah, no, you did actually. Yeah, I remember we were sitting at Alberton Oval watching Port Train and you were doing drafts.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, well, now you can add your keepers in now. You can save them there. So when you come back to it, they'll be there. And then, you can remove them from the draft pool and they get assigned to the teams that you put them on as well. And then, you can actually have a go at drafting and pick a team like you would in a real draft. So that's the other thing that's going at the moment.
Use that straight away.
Yeah, go have a look at it when you get home and use If you're not a member, sign up and then you'll get access to all of that stuff. Anyways, that's it for another week. Next week, we'll be back talking about midfielders. See you later, people.